Well, today I'm going to talk to you about an old technology that's been almost totally forgotten about. We're shooting this on a digital 8 camera. I actually have two of them here. This is being shot on an old TRV 110 Sony camera, and there are some differences between the two of them, and what we're going to talk about on this is the technology. This was given to me. An old friend bought this thing, and when he passed away I received a lot of his old equipment, and this was one of the pieces of equipment that I got from him. This is made by a company called Kea Optics, Kea Special Optics. And what it is it's an infrared pass filter. Now normally if I were to put this in front of the camera, you can't see a thing. And that's because this filter, which looks black to the eye, only passes infrared light. It blocks all visible spectrum. Now, some of you may have heard, and I've got another filter on the front of this camera, so I'm just going to remove the regular plain glass UV filter. When you put this filter on in front of the camera, you'll see nothing, except the older Sonys. If you put them in night shot mode, ta-da, now we can see infrared spectrum. In infrared spectrum, well, you can see things that you normally will not see in the normal visible spectrum. So this was done by putting the switch halfway between the on and the off position. What Sony did on later cameras was they modified the auto exposure. Normally when you put your camera in night shot mode, you get a green cast to the picture. This camera has had the little micro switch deactivated. And well, I'll show you what happens on a non-modified camera when you put infrared filter on and you put it in night shot mode in the daytime. So now I'm on the other camera. This camera here is not modified, and I'm going to go back to the other one again. I don't have the infrared filter on now, and I'm not going to get the same effect because it's overcast today, but basically if I take this camera and I put it in night shot mode during the day, the picture all washes out. And this was done to prevent people from using these infrared cut filters. So you put an infrared cut filter on a camera that's not been modified, like this. I'll show you. I'll put the infrared filter on so you guys can see what it does. So we're back to normal. We'll put the infrared filter on. We've got no picture. When I flick it to, well, very, very little picture, as you can see, because this is actually going through the infrared filter and the infrared pass and the infrared cut filter. When I put the camera into night shot mode, watch what happens. Now it's in night shot. As you can see, the camera just whites out. Everything whites out. Now I'll take this tape and I'll put it back in my other camera without the infrared cut filter on it, and you'll see when I put that camera in night shot mode, you'll see that you'll actually get an image. And I'll tell you what the modification is between the two cameras. Now you can't do this with any of the modern cameras anymore, and that's because Sony modified them to prevent people using these filters for obvious reasons, which I'll show you in the demonstration that comes up, because I have a tape that the previous owner of this filter gave me with the camera that he gave me. Well, actually he didn't give it to me. He passed away, and it was given to me from his estate. It was an old friend. But I'll show you what the difference is. And I've got a tape that he had done some shooting on, and we'll take a look at some of the images that he shot when he was playing with this other camera. Anyway, let me put the tape back in the other camera to show you how it responds differently without the infrared cut filter on in the daytime when I put it in night shot mode. And then we'll explain what the modification was that was done to the camera. This is the one that I changed the chassis on, that 3-part the series there I did a while back. But here's this camera with the modification, and when I put it in night shot mode, you'll see what happens. Okay, I've got a picture. My auto exposure is still working. If I take the KF filter and put it in front, now we've got a usable picture, and we're able to shoot in the daytime in infrared and look at infrared spectrum. What people would do on these cameras is they would, if you flicked it to on, you got that washed out picture. If you positioned the switch very carefully, about halfway between the off and the on, it would function just like it's functioning right now on this camera. It was hit and miss, and you had to work at it. But you can see it in the viewfinder, because if you went all the way on, the picture would wash out completely, and if you got it to that sweet spot halfway, you got a picture. And it's a two-step process, the switch. The switch mechanically moves the infrared cut filter out of the lens. So it actually pulls the filter out of the lens. But at the same time, the lever that's moving the filter operates a little pin switch. And what that little pin switch does is it turns on the green tone for the night shot. It turns on the infrared emitter on the front of the camera for seeing in total darkness. And it also cranks up the gain to full gain, and it turns off the auto exposure. By setting the switch halfway between the off and the on, you could find a sweet spot where the lever moved the infrared cut filter, but it hadn't depressed the switch. On this camera that I'm shooting on right now, the switch was just removed. It was just unscrewed and moved out of the way so that when you flick it into night shot mode, it doesn't activate the switch, and therefore you don't get the green tone. You get a nice black and white picture when you're shooting with the filter on, and the auto exposure still works. And that was a problem for Sony, because it allowed people to, these were designed for shooting in the dark, the night shot mode. Well, you'll see in the video that comes up when I do the demonstration from the tape that my friend gave me, what the night shot can do, or what the infrared pass filter can do. These were always dubbed as a see-through filter because they can see through clothing, and they can to a certain degree. And I'll show you that coming up in just a minute. What they did was, instead of having the optical cut filter just as an optical cut, like this, for the infrared, cut out the infrared portion, they actually made it an active part of the focus system. So they made it part of the actual lens. So when you removed the optical cut, the picture would defocus. And then the autofocus system would compensate for that by changing the actual focal length of the lens to compensate for the last element that was missing. And it was again a two-step process. When you flick the switch, mechanically the infrared cut filter, which is now the last element of the lens, was optically removed or mechanically removed from the lens, which would change the focal length of the lens. But then when the pin switch got pressed, it would compensate for that by adjusting the autofocus, that way preventing people from doing what was done on this camera, bypassing the switch. Thereby making those optical pass filters completely useless. But on the older generations of cameras, such as this one, you could bypass that switch and it would work just fine. So on this camera, we can see what will happen if I start to slowly move the switch, because this one's not modified. You'll see as the infrared cut filter is removed, the picture goes out of focus. You see that? Now, see, now I just completed the transition, and it hit the switch, which of course fixes the autofocus problem, but it also turns up the exposure and puts it into full night shot mode. So on this camera here, there you go. This particular one I'm shooting this with, that filter will not work with it halfway between. Now if I put the filter on, let me go grab the filter. If I put the filter on in that mode, where I've got the switch halfway between here, okay, you get an out of focus picture, and the camera will not focus at all. That's how Sony solved that problem. Right. So even bypassing the switch on this camera, this particular camera won't do anything, because this is a newer generation camera and it just goes all whited out. But it certainly worked on the older cameras, no problem. Let's take a look at some shots that was done with the other older version of camera before they did this modification to stop it from working.
The experiment we're about to do is to determine whether Canadian currency is legitimate or counterfeit. All Canadian currency has specific markers in the paper and in the inks, which will show up under different types of lighting. For example, if we look at this $100 bill, this is an old style Canadian $100 bill. We'll also compare it to newer style Canadian $100 bills, as well as to other denominations of currency such as 20s and 10s and 50s. So what we've got here on our desk to work with right now is we've got an older style Canadian $100 bill, and we've got some Canadian $50 bill. Oh, this is the newer style with the gold marking on it. As you can see, if you look at on a regular video camera, you will notice that both sides of the money appear as normal. You can see both sides of the money, along with both sets of serial numbers. They show up as normal. On the 50, on the 100, both sides of the bill show. Now there are differences between the old and the new style of money. Same with the 20s. Both sides will show, and the serial number will show very clearly. The new 100 is no different. Both sides of the bill will show. What we're going to do is we're going to install a Kea Optics infrared pass filter. This filter looks completely black. This is a special filter. It's called a PF1, made by Kea Special Optics. So once we install this filter, you will see nothing penetrates the filter, or very, very little. Once we switch the camcorder into night shot mode, we are illuminating the desk with just a regular 60-watt light bulb. And it's important to stress that you must use an incandescent source, as fluorescent lamps do not produce the required amount of infrared energy. And it is also okay to use one of these little black and white, little $50 type board cameras. These work quite well as well. So you don't have to use an expensive camcorder. I'm just using one because the filter I've got is for the camcorder. I could put the filter onto this little board camera and the results would be exactly the same. We'll first look at let's look at one of the old $100 bills first of all. If we look at the back side of the bill, everything looks to be pretty normal. If we look at the back side of the bill under infrared light. But if we turn the bill over and look at the front side of the bill, the first thing we will notice is that one serial number, the red serial number here, is missing. Also, the coat of arms is completely blank. Do you notice that? If this had been a photocopied bill, all of this would show as it would just look to be a black and white image, because in infrared there is no color. So that's the telltale. It's aside from the green dots that will glow under ultraviolet light. Under infrared, there is no coat of arms present. See that? It's blank. So that's an infrared marker in Canadian money. This is probably something that the banks don't want you to know about either, because this is not information that they generally release. We look at the new $100 bill. Under infrared light, it looks fine. There's no difference on the front side of the bill. However, if we turn the bill over and look at the back side of the bill is completely white. with the exception of the two barcode markers on the left side of the bill and the serial number on the right side of the bill. The 100s that show normally here are blank. One serial number is missing, as is the black marker in the middle of the bill. So all the newer bills, this is the format that they're using. The ink on the rear side of the bill is completely transparent to infrared light. That's a new 100. If we look at a newer 50, the newer 50, if you look at that, the front side of the bill is almost completely transparent. You can just very, very faintly see an outline. And we look at the back side of the bill, and the back side of the bill is like the 100, only the two markers and one serial number shows. That's important, because if had this bill been a copy, both serial numbers would show up. The counterfeiters cannot get the ink that is transparent to infrared but yet visible to the human eye, appearing as black. The $20 bill is the same. The front of the bill looks normal. The back side of the bill is completely black. You can actually see the 20 showing through from the other side. See that? Looks backwards. That's from the other side of the bill. It's completely black. And we can look at other denominations. Let's look at I don't have a newer 10 here, but the older 10s were the same. The older 10, this is the front side of the bill. If you notice, the front side of the bill is completely white, as is the back side of the bill. You see nothing. You don't see any serial numbers on an older $10 bill. It looks like a completely white piece of paper. Except for you might see some watermarks. Yeah, you can see some watermarks on the paper. You see the watermarks there? They will show up. But everything else on the $10, this is the old style of $10 bill. Not the new one. This is the old style of $10 bill with the serial numbers on the front. The new style of $10 bill looks very much like the other series, except, and I don't have one to show you. I don't think I have one anyway. I don't have an old $10 bill to show you. But the $10 bill is very similar, except for on the back side of the bill, you see the picture, but only one serial number shows. One serial number is blank, but you do see the picture. And I don't think we'll see too many of these anymore, but this is a $2 bill. And a $2 bill, the markers are the same. And of course the $1 bill, we won't see any of those anymore either, but the coat of arms does not show. And the back side does show. This is the first time I've looked at a 1, but the coat of arms on the front does not show, and one serial number, the red serial number, is missing. And I don't have a 5 to show you a 5, but the 5s are very much like the other bills. There are infrared markings in all of these denominations that will show up as information that is missing. If the bill has been copied, then the information will look normal. We're just going to take this infrared filter off now. And there, once again, there's the $10 bill without the infrared filter. And as you can see, both sides are clearly visible. But under infrared light, this bill comes up completely white. Completely white. So that's a quick test you can do to determine if Canadian currency is legal or not. If it is counterfeit, under infrared light, it will look normal, because the dyes used by current inkjet printers will show up under infrared light, as well as under normal light. The same with the toners used in color photocopy machines. The bill will look like an ordinary bill. There will be no information missing when you look at it under infrared light. So that's one good use for a Kea PF1 infrared pass filter.
I figured I'd repeat the same experiment showing the new Canadian money, which is this plastic stuff that's supposed to be counterfeit proof. I've got the Kea lens, our Kea filter here. I've got my infrared light source, which is a incandescent bulb, which are getting hard to find these days, but I've got my incandescent bulb here to illuminate the work table with, and I've got a Canadian 50, a Canadian 10, and a Canadian 20. And this is the plastic money, and we'll just take a look and see what if any infrared markers are in the new currency. So let's get a shot of the 10 and the 20 and the $50 bill first, and then we'll put the filter on. So there's the front side of the bills, and now we'll show you the back side of the 3 bills. Again, everything shows up on these. I'm trying to angle the light so it's not too reflective here. Okay, let's put this camera into infrared mode, and we'll put the filter in front. So there's infrared mode, and now let's put the filter on it. Okay, first let's take a look at the $10 bill. You notice something? Only half the portrait shows. The other half of the portrait, there's no picture. Also, only half of the 0 for the 10 is showing. That's from the front side of the bill under infrared light, or under infrared exposure. And again, this would not be possible using fluorescent or LED light sources. You need an infrared source in order to do this. Let's take a look at the back side of this $10 bill, and we'll see on the back side of the bill, again, there's only one serial number. There's another serial number over here, and the number 10. But all you see is the circle from the cutout of the 10. You don't actually see the actual number itself is not showing. And the word Canada here, there's the word Canada on the bill that's not showing, but you do see the dimples for the Braille. Only one of the serial numbers is showing, and on this side, well, none of the mountains are showing here. There's mountains on here, and there's a train, a train engine here, and it's not showing, and the no denomination. There's no 10 showing on the back of this bill, and only one of the 2 serial numbers. So now let's take a look at the $20 bill. Here's the front of the $20 bill, exactly the same. Yes, you can see the Parliament building here, but you don't see the top half of the strip. If you remember the bill from before, you can see it. If I put the light in behind, you can see the Queen's portrait, right? But when I pull the light in front, the portrait is almost completely missing. But you do see the Parliament building, and you only see half of the portrait, because the other half of it is not visible to infrared light. Same on the back side of the bill. Again, we just see the circle here on the 20, but we don't see the denomination. There's one serial number right where my finger is here, and it is also not showing. And again, here's the back side of the bill. The denomination up here is missing. The flowers, which are in red, are missing. And look at the $50 bill. Again, it's going to be the same. Depending on where I put the light, if I put the light in behind, we can see the portrait at the top of the screen. That's the hologram. If I pull the light in front, it's not really showing up as well. Again, only half the portrait here of the dead Prime Minister, and only the 5 of the 50 is showing. The 0 is not showing up as clearly. And again, on the back side, which is interesting, is that there's most of the boat here is missing. You're seeing the bridge, but the rest of the boat that's on here, this is a ship, and you can see the bridge, but the rest of the ship that's down here is not there. Again, only one of the 2 serial numbers is showing up, and just this center portion of the 0 are showing. So we'll take the filter off here, and you'll see, and I'm going to leave the camera in infrared mode. I'm not going to turn off, or not going to kill that yet. But now, here's what you see without the KF filter on. We're now still seeing we're seeing the full spectrum, and actually the portrait's showing up almost in color here now. If I turn the bill over, here's the front side of the bill. This is full spectrum, so we're allowing the infrared energy as well as the visible light to pass. And here's the hologram. The hologram appears as a color image. It's kind of cool. The hologram on all Canadian money is a color image, depending on how the light hits it. And I'll show you the other ones as well. Here's the 20. You have a color image of the Queen in the hologram. In the back side as well. You'll see it on the back side. And the 10. And now if I put the infrared cut filter back into the camera so that we're looking at just a full color image. Here's the front side of the 10. Right, there's the train I was talking about that was not visible on the back side and the 2 serial numbers. Here's the 20. The back side of the 20, the buildings, and the red flowers, the poppies, and the 50. Again, full portrait, and on the back side, here's the ship I was talking about. You see, under infrared only, the only part that showed up was the bridge. So that's the legitimate use of these filters, and that's what they're designed for. The other stuff that you see here is, that was the stuff that it wasn't designed for, but people used it for.